Have you ever heard of Percy Jackson? Perhaps you have and you're a diehard fan. Perhaps you've only heard about him. Or perhaps you haven't and you clicked on this video because you were bored. No matter the case, welcome. For those who aren't familiar, Percy Jackson is a character who started off his adventures in novel format. He slowly gained success over the years where multiple more novels were written about him, movies unfaithfully adapting him, a musical faithfully adapting him, and a TV show with promising results ahead. But it wasn't always this way. There weren't always bookshelves filled up with his adventures, screens documenting them, and musicals reenacting it. There was a time before all of this. A time before Percy Jackson. But where did he come from? And how did such a character be brought into our universe? Well, I might just have the answer for you today. This is the story of how Percy Jackson was born. You see this cute chubby-cheeked kid? This is Richard Russell Riordan Jr., or Rick Riordan for short. Born on June 5th, 1964 in the beautiful state of Texas. Now I know what you're thinking. He must be a comic book character because his first name, middle name, and last name starts with the same letter. I mean, just take a look at these names. But no, not a comic book character. However, Rick sure loved his comic books. His love for the adventures of Batman, Superman, Thor, and Iron Man was something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. And oh boy, did it stay. Good old Rick grows up and ended up hating school. Relatable. Now, school may have sucked, but remember how I said those comic adventures would stay with him for the rest of his life? Well, they kinda did. Ever heard of Lord of the Rings? Rick was in love with the Lord of the Rings. Not the movies, mind you, but the original books. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know anything about the franchise, because I don't. Actually, that Lego game was pretty freaking good. But the series was cool and interesting enough to keep him hooked. Remember, he didn't care much for school. I mean, he literally ran an underground newspaper off his school's expense where he would make fun of the teachers and principals without the school ever knowing about it. So maybe me saying that he doesn't care much for school is an understatement. But once again, The Lord of the Rings was his saving grace. The series inspired him to get into the most extremely action-packed sport his school had to offer. Well, not really a sport, but his love for the Lord of the Rings had brought him to mythology. Specifically, Norse mythology. Sorry, Norse mythology. Little did he know, the comic books he read as a kid revolving around Thor and Odin from Asgard were originally from, say it with me now, Norse mythology. No, it's Norse mythology. Then, as he kept on going through his education, he discovers even more myths that he falls in love with, such as Egyptian, Roman, and Greek mythology. And when I say he fell in love with mythology, I mean he fell in love with mythology. Trust me, this is very important for later. So, that's the end of the story. No, just kidding. Our mythology-loving nerd had become an English and history teacher. Pretty interesting there, huh? The guy who hated school became a teacher. What do you know? He taught all the things he loved as a kid. You know, like the mythology stuff I mentioned. Hint hint, still important for later. He taught for years and he enjoyed his job. But during those educational times, he started to read mystery novels, which had inspired him to write and publish his first book series ever. Oh boy, here we go. I'm sure you all know what's coming. Drum roll, please. The first ever series that Rick had created was the one, the only, Percy Jackson and the... wait, what? So yeah, his first actual series was an adult book series called Tres Navar. Fun fact, he rewrote the first book 14 times before it got published. It did fairly well for his first ever series, so fair play to Rick, but it has nothing to do with our main protag. But what does have something to do with our main protag revolves around the sun. No, not the sun, the sun. Who invented the English language, huh? Anyways, Rick's son was born 3 years before Tres Navar's published. As he grew up, guess what? He hated school. Sounds like someone we know. A big reason for this dislike was because of Haley possessing both ADHD and dyslexia. Basically what this means is that he had a difficult time both paying attention and reading. And those are like the two main ingredients for succeeding in school. So, as ancient philosophers would say, that's rough, buddy. But even though school was hard for Haley, our hating of the educational system and somehow becoming a teacher individual named Rick Riordan had vowed to find the peanut butter to the jam of this situation. The bacon and eggs, if you will. The burger and fries, you might suggest. The mac and cheese. Okay, we get it! What I'm trying to say is that Rick had been able to figure out what school subject clicked with his son. There was one subject, and one subject alone, that interested young Haley. It wasn't science, or math, or even lunch. That one was my favorite. The subject that interested him the most was a little course called Greek Mythology. I totally didn't hint that was going to be important for later, huh? Since Haley only found that specific subject enjoyable, Rick had dedicated some time to read Haley some Greek myths as a bedtime story. You know, to keep him interested in it. Thank God his son liked the very stuff his father taught in class. Imagine if Haley was just like, "Yeah, Dad, I only like Call of Duty." And the good man threw the grenade and all the bad men went away. Yeah, so anyways, Rick read Haley a bedtime story about Greek myths. And since the Greeks are kinda dead, and since their civilization is kinda old, and since we kinda don't have a lot of their culture left over for us to examine, Rick eventually ran out of mythology to tell. I know, shucks. Though you'd think this would be the end of the story, right? No more mythology to read, which means no more bedtime stories, which means the end of young Haley's passion for Greek mythology. However, 3 words would change this narrative entirely. 3 words that would spark millions of laughter around the world. 3 words that would successfully change the course of history forever. What were those 3 words, you ask? Rick tells Haley that there are no more Greek myths left to tell. Haley responds with, "Make one up." So Haley told his father to make up his own Greek story. And so, Rick had set out to create something that would keep his son interested in Greek myth. But what did he do exactly, you might be wondering? Well, like I mentioned before, Rick was an English and history teacher, which meant that he taught Greek mythology in his classroom. However, there was one assignment he had taken from his teachings as a source of inspiration for this bedtime story. What were the teachings, you ask? You get a cookie if your answer was Greek mythology, but there was one specific assignment that he gave his students. He told them to make up their own Greek hero story. Rick had told his students to make a character and have them be a demigod, give them powers, make them go on a quest, and have them fight monsters. So, the teacher/author individual named Rick Riordan was now putting all his passions and everything he's ever learned into this one specific story. From his liking of comic books and fantasy stories, to his obsession with mythology, to his years of experience teaching middle school and understanding children of that age, to having the skills and mental drive to publish a successful series, and with the love he has for his dear son Haley, all built up to this. May I introduce you to the 12-year-old ADHD dyslexic hero. Welcome, Percy Jackson. So there you go. That's how Percy Jackson was born. He started off as a bedtime story for Rick's son. Afterward, his son and his students had urged him to publish the story. He was hesitant, but after much supportive feedback from them, he finally decided to go all out with it. After so much time and effort went into creating this fleshed out fantasy book, it was finally ready for publication. And then shortly after, it got published, and the rest is history. Get it? Because we're dealing with history? Like the mythologies and stuff? Okay, good. You get the joke. But yeah, sorry if you're expecting some crazy epic story about all the hardships and all the mental battles that our author had to conquer to get through in order to create this character. He simply just made it because of the love he has for his son. And I ask you, must there be a better reason than that? But yeah, I hope this video was enjoyable to watch. If you want videos like these, or if you got any requests for videos that I should make, then you're always welcome to let me know in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, as the support really lets me know that you guys love this stuff, which also lets me know to make more of it. So yeah, like always, stay awesome, and thank you for watching.